If you're in one of these professions, chances are you will need a good working knowledge of Excel to do your job and will most likely be tested at interview level. In this video, we're going to talk you through some of the most common interview questions by big blue chip employers starting at level 1 and moving all the way to level 10. Use the link in the file in the description below to join in and complete them for yourself, and don't forget to post your results in the comments. Let's get into it. Okay, so question 1 of our Excel test. So it's broken down into 3 distinct steps. So step 1 is convert the order values in cells C9 to C11 into USD. So if I select those cells, and I'm going to include the total as well, so I can change the format of the cells in the total. And then what I'm going to do is Control, Shift and $sign. Now that changes that into a currency. Unfortunately, it's the GBP currency, but if you're in the US, that should convert that into US dollars and complete that step. But what I need to do is Control and 1. This brings us into the Format Cells dialog box. I'm already on currency, but what I need to do is just change the symbol and change that down in the middle here to English and then United States, and then just hit OK to that, and that'll change that into dollars. So that's my step 1. My step 2 is that I want to create a formula in C12 that's just going to add up those order values. So if I equals sum and then include my range, close my parentheses and hit return, that's my sum formula. Or a shortcut to that on Windows is Alt and plus, or within Mac would be Shift Command and T. The final step then is to insert 2 black lines on cell C12, one on the top and one on the bottom. So if I go up to the top of my ribbon and just on the home section, and then just down here under my borders, I'm just going to select a top and bottom border and OK to that. So question 2 of our Excel test. So use a formula to identify the order quantity for the 3 order numbers in cells E7 to E9. So these 3 orders here, what we have to do is find the corresponding order quantity against these orders here. So we can see here, this one here, 571 is equal to 3506. So the formula we're going to use is going to be a VLOOKUP. It's probably the most used formula within all of Excel. So how does it work? Well, equals VLOOKUP. Our lookup value is our order ID, comma to that, our table, which is all of the data that we're looking up. So if I Control Shift right and then Control Shift and down. Now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to F4 just to lock the value of that, comma our column index. So we want the second column, so that's 1, 2. Comma, we want a exact match, so I'm going to put in 0 for that and close my parentheses, and then I can just drag that formula down and that will give me the value of what I want there. So that's test question number 2, all done. So question 3, and question 3 is made up of 2 steps. So step 1 is write a formula in cells E7 to E9 to identify the 3 biggest value orders. So we have a list of our order IDs here on the left, and then we have our order values, and they go down towards row 106. And what we need to do is we need to populate in here the biggest, the second biggest and the third biggest. So the formula I'm going to use is equals large, hit tab. Where do we want to look up our order value? Where it's this in column C. So if I Control Shift and down, and then I want to actually lock the values of that just by hitting F4 and then hit a comma. The K will signify, do I want the first, the second or the third largest? So on the top I want the first largest, close my parentheses and hit return. And what I want to do is just Control and down to copy that. I can change the 1 to a 2 and hit return, and then just Control and down that one again and change the 2 to a 3, and that should be picking out my top 3 biggest orders, and we can check that in a minute. My step 2 is I want to actually then pull out the 3 smallest orders. So I can use the small function for this one. It works exactly the same as the large function. So I just need to select my range. I am going to F4 that to lock it down, hit a comma, and I want 1 for my smallest, hit return, and then I'm just going to drag that down and just change my 1 to my 2, and then my 2 to a 3. And I can check that then by just putting a filter on this data here. So Control Shift and L. And then if I just put the filter on the order value and just move that over to the right, you can see my smallest order is 11972, 12224 and 12717. So they're the same orders as there. And if I skip down to the end, I get 49830, 49421 and 46555. So that's question 3. Question number 4, which has one step, which is create a pivot table in cell F7, which is this cell here, with date grouped by quarter on the x-axis and with the order value displayed for the quarter and the order ID in the filter. So pivot tables, really important tool if you're using Excel. You're going to use them for lots of data analysis, so important that we know how to do them for this particular test. So what we're going to do is just select all of the data in the range here. So if I Control Shift and down, and then I just go up to the top of my ribbon and insert across here to the left, pivot table. I'm going to put that on the existing sheet and just scroll up, and I wanted that in cell F7 here, and hit OK. You've got a number of options on what you want to do and what data you want to drop into the pivot table. So if we look at the instructions again, what we wanted to do was drop the date into the x-axis. So if I go date, and I'm going to drop that into my rows, which is my x-axis, and then I'm going to drop my order value into my values. So therefore I have my order value by my date, and then it's asked me to put my order ID into my filter. So that's nearly it, but you see here that actually what it wants to do is it wants to group it by quarter. So if I just select anywhere within the pivot table, right mouse click, select group, and we want to group that by quarters, and then hit OK. And we can see there's just one quarter, which was the 3 months. Let's sum up our order value, and then we have the order ID within our filter. So that meets all of the criteria there. Okay, so question 5 is asking us to create a chart, and it's saying that it wants the order value as the primary axis as a bar chart and the order volume as a secondary axis as a line chart. So if we just have a look at our data here, we have individual months, and then we have an order volume and an order value. So what we're going to do is just select all of our data. Now I can go in up into the top of the ribbon and just insert it through a chart here on the right, but instead I'm going to use the shortcut key Alt and F1. That inserts a bar chart there that we can see. Now it doesn't quite meet the criteria that we want, because you can see that our order volume is still a bar chart, and what it's asked us to do there is to put that as a line chart but on the secondary axis. So what I'm going to do is just select the order volume. I'm going to double click on that, and I'm going to change that to the secondary axis. Obviously that's changed that now where it kind of overlaps the existing chart. So if I just select any of the blue charts and then right mouse click and change chart type and change that to a line. So there we have it. We can see our order values then. That's with the order value here on the left, and the blue line is our order volume, and that's the axis here on the right. So we're halfway through. How's your score? If you like this video, don't forget to like, subscribe and share. Okay, so our question 6 is asking us to write a formula in cell F7, which is just this cell here, to sum the sales value of product A in January. So if I look across to this table here on the left, I can see that there's a months, and there's several months that are duplicated, and then I can see there's products, and I can see some of those products are duplicated as well. So to calculate this, we're going to use a sum ifs formula, which allows us to create several different criteria to sum for. So if I equals sum ifs, hit tab to that. So where do I want to sum up? I want to sum all of my sales value here. So if I control shift and down and then hit a comma, I can go back up. My criteria range 1 is where am I looking up my data, my first range. So I'm going to put in first my date, control shift and down to that. And my criteria that I'm going to use to sum if based on that will be the month January. So I'm going to put Jan in quotation marks and then hit comma. My second criteria range is going to be where I'm going to look for all of my products. So I control shift and down to that and then hit comma. And again, I'm going to put product A within quotation marks because it's a text. Close my parentheses, just go up to the top and hit return. And that's brought back 79,886. So let's see if I filter for all of January. And then for product A, if I sum that up, 79,886, that looks like the right answer. So question 7 is to write a formula in cells E7 to E9 to insert Y to review a project if the project status is red and the project cost is overspent. So if we just look at the table here, we've got 3 projects and they have varying different statuses. And the product cost can be over if it's in brackets, so over cost, and under cost if it's not in brackets. So what we'll do is, because there's 2 criteria and they both need to be met, we're going to use an and an if statement. Now, if you haven't used if statements before, I'm just going to link a description just up the top of the video now to a previous video that I would have done. But let's put in our and function first. So if I equals and it's just a couple of logical statements that we need to put in. So the first one is if our status, which is cell C7, is equal to, and then we need to put it in quotation marks because it is a text, if that is equal to red, and if the project cost, which is a cell D7, if that is less than 0, then close my parentheses and hit return. And let's just drag that down. So we can see the bottom project looks like both criteria are met. But what we need to do is we need to wrap an if statement around that to give us the why of whether we should review that project. So if I put in if, and then the logical test is the and function that we've already done, which will give us the trues and the falses. So if I do comment to that, the value if true, remember if both of those conditions are true, we want to review that project. And if it's not true, then we'll just put in a no. And again, both of those will be in quotation marks because they're text. Close my parentheses and hit return. And then I can just drag that down. So you can see the only project that needs reviewing is project C because the status is red and it's overspent. Okay, so question 8 is to write a formula in cells F7 to F12 to find the commission on each store's sales. So we have a table up the top here which has got stores from all around the world, and then it has the sales in US dollars then for each of those stores. Down below we've got another table which just tells us then what is the percentage commission that the store manager earns based on what level of sales he reaches. So for instance, anywhere from 0 to just under $25,000 he will earn 0%, but over $25,000 to $50,000, he'll earn about 5%. And that goes all the way up to $100,000, which max out at 20%. So we have to write in a formula which will just calculate what is the commission based on each of these sales. So what we can do is we can use the X lookup formula. Now, if you haven't used it before, I'm just going to link a description up the top of the video now to a previous tutorial that I would have done on that you might find useful. But if I type in X lookup tab, our first argument is our lookup value, which is going to be our sales here for the Dallas store. And if I hit comma to that, we're going to look for those sales then down below in this commission table. So if I select those, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to lock the values by F4ing those, because I'm going to drag those formulas down shortly. Hit comma to that. My next argument is my return array. So that's the commission that I'm going to basically return. So if I select the data here in my store manager commissioner table, and then I just want to lock the values on that as well. If I hit comma, my next argument is almost like an error handling. If not found, what do we want to say? So I don't want to say anything for that, so I can just simply put in another comma. And this is where we're going to use XLOOKUP's functionality. So on the match mode, instead of an exact match, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go -1 to get an exact match or smaller item. So I'm going to select that, close my parentheses, and hit return. So for this store in North America and in Dallas, we can see the sales were $10,000. That didn't earn any commission because it's below the 25,000 before 5% kicks in. So if I drag that formula down, we can see all of the stores populated, and we just sense check one in particular. So let's have a look at Rome, which was $98,000. So that was below $100,000 but above 75, so that's 15%, so that looks right. And if we have a look at maybe Sao Paulo, that's over $100,000, so that hits the 20%, so that looks right as well. So question 9, we were being asked to write a formula to split the 4 items in cell B8 into 4 separate items in the range D8 to G8. So if I have a look at my data here, what I've got within this cell here, so B8, I've got a list of items separated by commas, and what we want to do is write a formula, just one formula, to actually separate out each of those items into 4 separate cells. So what I'm going to use the text split function to do that. If you're not familiar with that, I'll link a description up the top of the video where I've done some examples of that and other text range formula that you can use. So equals text, and then if we select text split, the text that we want to separate out, so we just select B8, hit a comma. Now what we want to do is our column delimiter, which is effectively what the symbol that we want to split all of our text on. I'm going to put that in a quotation marks and put comma. So this is the comma after each of the words here. We're going to separate each of those words there. Close my exclamation marks, close my parentheses, and hit return. And you can see what it does. It creates this text split and it spills the data over the other 3 cells. So a really cool and useful formula to use. So question 10 is the last question on our Excel test. So it's asking us to find the number of shirts we need to sell to reach a $10,000 profit. It's given us some assumptions here. So it's saying that each t-shirt should be sold at $35.99. The unit cost is $12.50 and our fixed cost is $20,000. So what we need to do is populate in here into this cell C12 with the number of units that we need to sell in order to reach a profit of $10,000. So how we're going to do this is we're going to use the solver tool within Excel. So to use that, we'll just go up to the top of the ribbon, select data, then go across to the right and select solver. So that selects the solver parameters. What we need to do is set our objective, which is going to be the cell that contains our profit. And we want that cell to contain a value of $10,000. And we want to do that by changing the number of units sold. and then we can just select solve and then hit OK. And that has effectively detailed out that we need to sell 1,277 units in order to hit a profit of $10,000. So a really useful tool for any kind of break even or profit analysis.